And the two other executive board members. Absolutely.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cromaine Library Board meeting, special call board meeting. It is being held in conjunction with a committee meeting at the same time. I am the president of the board, Bolin, and I want to thank you for your attendance. We are calling this meeting to order, and with the call to order, I'm going to ask everyone to rise, face the flag as we prepare to salute the flag. We will give you a moment to reposition. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We will now take roll call. Jeannine Gogoleski. Here. Becky Basley. Here. Nancy Rosso.
Here.
Holly Naylor. Here. Don Smith.
Here.
Kim Armstrong.
Here.
And we also have a committee member, and again, your name? Dick Krieger. Dick Krieger, and you were present, I assume? Yes. Bill Bolin, I am here, all present and accounted for. We will now go into the approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda for June 3rd.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion among the board? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion prevails, and we are going to go into the discussion and decision items. And before we proceed here, I would just like to remind everyone to please adhere to proper decorum. Please try to keep your comments to yourself until it is time for the call to public. No jeering, no catcalls, hand claps, boos, expressions of joy, or things of this nature. This is a public meeting that is being conducted by duly elected officers of the state of Michigan. So thank you very much for that consideration. And at this time, we will open up our discussion on policy 310, material selection, community relations, discussion about labeling of sequestering of material. Don, I am going to turn it over to you. A resolution may be warranted, and I'm going to turn it over to you for your findings, the committee's findings, and what you will recommend.
Okay, so just so everybody's aware, I'm not sure if it was super clear in the packet that you got. So what I did is I took two versions, the version of the top one version of the policy that I create, as well as the one that Bill brought to the last meeting, and I actually used AI to merge those policies. I also made a couple of corrections and things that we actually discussed at our community relations meeting that were picked up on, and added those. And then I sent them to Sarah to review them as well, and actually put some clarifications, grammatical errors, things like that in to make it more consistent with the policy after the version written, and to make it more clear as a policy. So that's where we're at right now. So that should be, I think it's the third one that you received. I'm not sure we have so many copies. So that's what we have right now. So if we want to open discussion with that bill, or
That's okay.
input. So I thought we could bring, it would be helpful, the reason I did that, I thought it would be helpful to at least have something to start with at this meeting. If people are unhappy or disagree or have suggestions that would be better, input, I'm open to suggestion. We want to make sure it's suits you. So I just wanted to have something to start with, so this meeting wouldn't be kind of ridiculous.
Right after reading your revision and the adjustments that you made, I commented online in our email chain, and I think it's excellent. I think that was a great idea, and what we put together is marvelous. I commented on the email chain. Absolutely, Cromaine, our Cromaine board. I must have missed it.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen any emails. So was it just,
It came from the Cromaine Library, so that's where I found it. That's where it was posted. But at any rate, regardless, I read it, I thought it was excellent. I thought you did a superb job in terms of what you put in.
So my question, so the comments, so I'm looking at the final version, were the ones that came on the side of your.
those are just for me?
Perfect. So
Because I wanted,
to address those as well.
because I thought that would be easier to figure out.
You know, so you might have just replied to me possibly, but it wasn't like making changes or anything, it just said thanks for doing this is good. It was not like specific
So
content.
for clarity, we are looking at the copy that starts out with the little paragraph on the top, because we have like 4 of them.
Right, below is a combined and revised version.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable jumping straight to that. I'm not comfortable with using the language that Bill got from some lawyer that we haven't vetted, haven't discussed, haven't considered as a group. I'm fine going through the original 2 that came, that was our committee recommendation. We had 2 that we were going to discuss. So I think that we should stick with those 2 because that's what actually came out of it. And that is what has been approved, most of it multiple times by multiple boards.
Well, with the original 2, if you compare them side by side, as I did for several times here, so the changes that we had in the original 2 through committee, that is what is presented in here.
It's not
Along
exactly.
No, it's
No, it's
different.
not. There are
No, so-
changes.
I didn't finish, along with some more revisions as well, and some more definitions to go there too.
Right, that didn't come out of committee.
But that, and that's why this is a special committee meeting. So this is no longer just committee.
That's right.
The full board making comments. So like I said, I wanted to take what I felt were the most clear to read and instructive and easy to understand versions of both. And that's what I kind of instructed AI to do. And then I reviewed it myself and tried to make it even more easy to understand. And I think that that's why I did that, so that we wouldn't have to start from scratch, because it was pertinent that Bill did bring another version that many of us thought there were good points to it. There was good parts to each of them, and I thought it was better to come up with a revised version that we could go from there.
And as per,
Set a precedent as a board.
Holly, point of order.
Please,
As per our last board meeting, we had decided that we would look those over and come back to make conclusions tonight.
Yes, and I was sharing
We
my
have,
opinion on whether
we
we should.
have looked
pick
those
that.
over, and I just want to clarify, because you're saying that you're uncomfortable because this did not come out of committee. This came out of a board decision. Now you may have the floor.
Thank you so much, Bill. No, that's not why I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable because this board has set a precedent that if any of the members consider somebody who's providing legal advice to be nonpartisan or, questionable in any sense, that we don't use, correct, that legal advice, right? We stepped away from the lawyer that this library has had for a very long time, well before this issue ever came up, and it always provided excellent guidance to us. Because of concerns about partisanship, that wording came from an extremely partisan organization. So to be consistent and not hypocritical, I do not believe we should use that wording if we're not willing to use the wording from Ansernick because it was considered very partisan.
So the wording from insert is that we do nothing. So we don't need to worry about the wording. So what we're trying to do, this has nothing to do about the
Do you agree that we
it
should be consistent?
I'm speaking. We're not using that as legal advice. We're trying to come up with a fair, consistent, easy to understand policy.
It is
It has nothing to do with whether they're a lawyer or not. If you go by the lawyers that we were originally using, we would be doing nothing right now. So we can just forget about that. This is not about one lawyer or another lawyer. This is about working together to come to something that actually works for everyone, so that the community can feel comfortable, everyone in the community, not one group or another. This is about collaboration and working together so that we can all get along. There's no reason that we have to get rid of something that we like the wording from just because it came from a lawyer that you don't agree with.
That's what we wanted, so why did we stop working with Ann?
They wanted us to do nothing, which the community is not having.
Again, if we want to be consistent and transparent and respect everybody's opinion in the community, we're not going to have different standards for which side is partisan.
This is not about a lawyer.
It is literally about a lawyer. Bill said in the last meeting, I reached out to a lawyer to get suggested wording for a policy without checking with any of us before.
Well, he
Without I'm
proffered, he
speaking.
proffered
Thank
the
you.
word. Thank you.
It is a legal organization. He said we could retain them and they could help us to go to the Supreme Court
If necessary.
if necessary. So it's a legal suggestion.
Right, but I'm not a lawyer. I took wording that I thought was more easy to understand and merged the two policies.
And
It's
that is
not about one lawyer and a
Fine, I think we should completely disregard any suggestions as it fits, and then I'm fine, we can move on.
And for the record too, I just would like to say, for those who weren't here before, this group is called the Alliance Defending Freedom. We got the draft, I got it 2 hours before the last meeting, without any time to go over it, or even appreciate who the organization was. And then, having done some research on it, it's definitely a group that has an agenda. And let's be clear about that, right from the get-go. And so, I mean, to pretend that it's just language and not a legal opinion is false. This group,
Sure, I thought you were.
almost.
Thank you.
When I asked the question, how much this is gonna cost this library, because we already know that one judgment cost one library $113,000. You told me that there would be no cost for this legal opinion we got, nor any subsequent costs that would be incurred if we got sued.
If we retain them.
So this is much more than just AI combining a bunch of words. This is serious, and it's high risk. And I just want that for the record.
And you may put that into the record and in comment to that. The law firm that I spoke with, they definitely have a bias, just as the law firm representing the Library Association has a bias. People have different opinions. Yeah,
Point of order.
we listen to the attorney's advice, and I have listened to this attorney's advice. We as a board chose to disregard the do nothing, and we have opted, at least some of us, on at least attempting to make a decision on a policy, something that we hold firmly to, a belief in, and that's why we're here right now.
And that's fine, I'm perfectly comfortable talking about the two policies that we have brought out of committee without the addition of legal language that we have not agreed on, and that sets a dangerous precedent for the board that we're going to not be consistent based on political affiliation.
Okay.
You guys have all said you wanted this board to be nonpartisan. Do you?
Yes, and I am not doing this as a legal decision. This is
So
a
just
waste
said it
of
was
both sides. They are not my lawyer. I did not speak with them. I took the language that I thought was pertinent and put it together because it makes sense. It's easier to read. It'll be easier to uphold. It makes sense. And I'm the one who did the other two. So in my opinion, as the person who did the work of doing this, it makes more sense to go with a policy that's easier to understand.
I'd like to be the next person to speak.
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to focus on the purpose of the meeting. The way I view it is this is an extension of the community relations. All of the board is here, which is good because it is important that we all have input. So I would like to suggest that we focus on what the community relations committee generally does, and what the community relations committee does is go through the policy and discuss the language. So I would like to see, and Dawn, she merged the two documents, but in the spirit of a starting point, Holly, I'll address to you, just for your comments, do you have a preference as to what document we could start with and go through the document?
Yeah, I think we should go with the two that came out of committee that don't have language coming from a bipartisan source.
Thank you. And so I would like to proceed in that fashion. We have 3 documents in front of us. We have a merged copy and we have the 2 here. I would like to go line by line, I'm open to suggestions, but in an effort to focus on the authoring of the policy, if we could start at the beginning, go through it, and modify language as we go. Just focus on the policy. Everybody's in the
Okay, which one will we start?
Michelle,
But if I could just comment as well, that is what Dawn has done,
with
merging into
No,
the
that's,
third
there's
one.
no discussion there.
Yeah.
Right, we're talking about discussing which lines to include, correct?
Correct.
Right, so I'd like to do that as a committee, instead of it coming from one
Yeah,
person.
and I agree with you, Jeannine,
Right.
but in the spirit of moving this along,
Okay,
as a start, I
let's
would
go.
recommend, we could debate the approach,
Right.
but if we can just approach it and go, it would be beneficial to know.
Becky, I think that's common sense, and within the constraint, though, I would also remind everyone at our last board meeting, because we did receive that information late. I received it 4 hours before our board meeting. That is when it arrived to me, and we all received it late. That's why we decided to bypass its consideration until this evening, giving everyone here ample time to read all the proposals and to go over them. And so I'm hoping that our board has done its due diligence and read the different proposals, the different items, and we called this meeting as a board in order to consider them. And what Dawn has done is exemplary. She took the different versions as per our discussion as a board to meet and discuss the different proposals, putting them together, which is what she did was phenomenal, in my opinion.
So I'd like to start with Roman numeral I, purpose. The purpose of Cromaine District Library's material selection policy, quotes, policy, is to set broad guidelines to assemble, preserve, organize, administer, and promote the use of a wide range of communication media and to inform the public about principles upon which the selections are made. The functions are undertaken to further the objectives of the Cromaine District Library.
Can I help you out, or can I
Yeah.
just, real quick? Okay, so is it safe to suffice on both of these versions? Both of the versions, the very first page, okay, so would have, the committee agreed to this before, when we take out other definitions, it does not refer to reader guidance. The term selection refers to the decisions to add, retain, or withdraw materials in the collection. So as it's striked down on both of these to say that. Both of these 2 on the front page are the exact same wording. Is it okay if we strike that? And
So what Jeannine suggesting makes sense, if we just look at the changes from the original policy, just on the order.
It would go like
I have a question about that bit, and it's on the 3rd one. If we remove that, after seeing other suggestions, I was focused on that as a librarian, that we're not talking about reader guidance, but if we add labeling or sequestering or moving, we have to name it somewhere as being part of the policy. So we need to come back to that and say something about providing reader guidance through postings. And I don't know how to do it yet, but we need to make a little star.
Sarah, thank you. I had the exact same thought process.
Right.
I'll let anybody else speak. So here was my idea for that, my proposal to the group. And it's based on 2 things. So we have a definitions section whereby we define selection, refers to the decision to add, retain, or withdraw materials in the collection. We have a strikeout, it does not refer to reader guidance. So from a definition perspective, and I'm asking for it, I'll give you my thought and I'll ask for support or historic information. So I am thinking that why selection was defined is because the title of this is Material Selections Policy, ergo we define selection. So on that premise, I think that indeed, per your comment, there is reader guidance now embedded into the suggested language. I would propose that we call it Material Selection and Reader Guidance Policy to encapsulate the concept of reader guidance. Merely my thought, but I'm proposing.
think that's a good
That's
suggestion.
a really good suggestion, because I think we've gone, doesn't just pertain to the purchasing of the collection.
So you add that in the definition.
So two things. Change the title to include, reader guidance, material selection and reader guidance, and I'm sorry, I'm scribing and talking at the same time. So that's change one. Change two would be to define, to include the definition of reader guidance. And Sarah, per your, comment, over here, just because I'm looking at this too, it says, should we define labels, locations, form of reader guidance? And I think that you could use the same model with selection meaning blah, reader guidance meaning blah, per your verbiage. So those are my points.
What else would you include, selection, reader guidance, labeling, showing?
So per Sarah's, thought process, the term would be, reader guidance, and then she supplied some verbiage, like reader guidance includes labeling or location, and then words, the definition, whatever, help me out, please. And, reader guidance meaning not inclusive of, but not limited to labels, shelving, location, et cetera, et cetera.
There might be other terms too, but that's the two we're talking about.
Exactly. So,
Great input.
I'll keep going. Unless anybody
Which
else wants to
version
share.
are you working on?
I'm working on all of them, to be honest.
Back and forth?
Yeah, and so whatever the best approach is, but Dawn, as part of the committee, you seem to do really good at,
Actually,
yeah.
I'm so embedded in doing all three of these myself, that it would be better to have an outside person because they all know what's in my head.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
I would be very comfortable with you,
okay,
continuing that.
I'm gonna keep going. So purpose, definitions is where we are now. The first paragraph, I don't think it's changed. We just had a conversation in regards to the title and the definitions, which brings us to the third Roman numeral 3, which is goals of material selection. If I look at all the documents, there's no changes to that, right, okay, thank you. So I would proceed to responsibility for selection. So, I don't, there's a change, okay, no,
Three versions.
I don't think there's a change to that. We got general principles. We propose to strike out of the second section in, section 5, letter A, strike out the second, sentence, which, I think everybody, is in agreement with, which actually provides us to letter B, which there are now changes in this section. So,
So one of the things that we did was this was through our committee, that we felt that, it should just say parents because it was kind of not inclusive. So we added, or legal guardians.
that's right.
So that came from the committee.
Okay.
And then there's a difference between these two.
I was gonna say get different lettering, right? So,
One has a sentence struck out.
oh, there we go, yeah. So, where does this leave us? So there's
We
a
should-
version with it in and a version without it in.
We want to read the sentence.
Oh, sorry, I'll read it.
Just so everybody.
Therefore, okay, this is the sentence.
Paragraph, so that, that can actually know the content instead of just the sentence.
Okay, perfect. Okay, second paragraph. The library respects each individual's parent or legal guardian right to supervise his or her children's choice of reading materials. However, the library does not have the right to act in local parentis in place of the parent or guardian. Therefore, a parent or legal guardian, okay, so this is the sentence in
This would be
debate
the
right now. Therefore, a parent or legal guardian who chooses to restrict the materials his or her children select must accompany those children when they use the collection to impose those restrictions. Period. So in one version it's struck out, in another version it remains. I'll pause.
Discussion on it staying or leaving at this point. I don't know why we would remove parental responsibility from our policy.
I agree. I don't know why that part was struck out, so it's just like, and I mean, that puts the onus back on the parents. We are not a person, we are not a library to take the place of the parents. If a parent wants their student, their 7 or their 6-year-old to read something in the adult section, that is up to the parent. I don't believe that should be struck out of there either.
And I have a question. So I would like to model, again, my approach for whatever debate. I would like to model the conversations that occur in the Community Relations Committee, just because it seems like that's a very, that seems like a good approach.
Right.
So what do you guys do? So
We're just,
okay.
maybe that would just kind of say, okay, like
I
this.
think originally
Yeah.
it was struck because we were worried that it would reflect what we were doing, but if the group feels it doesn't, I think it's okay to do that. But I think that was an original, you can remember why we were considering that.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
I can't remember what you're saying.
I would prefer to keep it. It was, I remember the conversation and we left it different so that we could talk about it. And I don't know that it matters. I think it's easier to say you're not a local apprentice by giving the parents those rights,
Right.
but also requiring them to exercise them.
Yeah, I think the retention sentence makes sense. I agree.
I'll finish this paragraph just for posterity's sake. Juvenile material may be labeled with prejudicial viewpoint. All right, so that moves us to section C in section Roman numeral 5.
So I have a question about that sentence. That was added for our committee with answering a few years ago. And we focused on juvenile, so it was only a juvenile issue. And juvenile means 5th grade and down. Do we want to remove the word juvenile? Because if we're going to say later we can label, we should circle that word and come back to it.
I think that's a good point.
That's good.
Because that's why I wasn't considering between teen and adult.
So we should just say materials may be legal and remove juvenile.
Yeah, but we had a long discussion about
Right.
that before, but I think that we should
So-
come back to that if we, or take it out or consider it.
Right as I was on the board when these discussions were made, or this, or any of this was created, I enjoy being brought up to speed on everything.
And we put juvenile because it was only making those three.
Right. So let's my suggestion, take out juvenile.
And then change the word
To materials may be labeled with non-prejudicial viewpoint.
So to that end though, you just sent us out a new policy that you enacted recently based on discussion from the board table, I'm assuming, and what Howell's been doing, and it's called Big Concerns for Little People, so we are labeling. And we're taking a categorical group of people and putting it in the same place where potty training is, deaf and grief. So I have a real problem with that if this is our policy, because it's not neutral, it's got a viewpoint.
You noted. You may object, and so we note your objection.
So I would add, for conversation discussion purposes, from a policy perspective, so the sentence, focusing on the sentence itself. It is appropriate or isn't appropriate in the policy. Barring your comments, I duly know with you, but from a policy perspective, what's your opinion?
Well, I think they conflict with our actions, is what I'm trying to say. you're calling being gay a big concern for little people. That's what we're doing with our dots that we have now labeled. I don't know, the public doesn't have all this stuff, but this is what we have downstairs now, big concerns for little people. And what's on this list is adoption, foster care, death, grief, divorce, single parents, same-sex marriage, emotional development, first days of school, haircut, separation, health. I mean, these are all really great topics. It goes all the way down to potty training. And then LGBTQ is on the list. And that's a whole categorical group of people. You can't put it in under a heading that says big concerns for little people and not say you're putting some value or prejudicial viewpoint to who you are.
So from a
Yes.
policy perspective,
Okay, enough with the stamping, please, let's have respect here. This is a committee meeting where the board is getting together to write policy. Please be respectful or you will be asked to be removed.
Yes, if you continue to disrupt, you will be asked to be removed. Jeannine, as your tone is quite an interesting statement. And Jeannine has asked to serve as our sergeant of arms. If you disrupt, you will be removed. It is just that simple.
So, the public discourse posted all this information was on the website, so people can scroll through and public can see this if they wanted to. It's on the website, it's part of the package to check out. This was modeled off another library in our county. So this is not a point of Sarah or the board trying to be disrespectful of any group. This was a way that another library, we're modeling after them, how we could put books together so that people can find them easier.
It doesn't make it right though. Just
Maybe
because
change the title of it, but this was not at all meant as disrespect for anybody. And I think people want to be able to find the books that they really want. And that would be a group of books that people really want to read. So it'd be easier for people to find it, or people not to read them if they don't want to. It's not prejudicial in my opinion.
My understanding, this is happening in libraries all across the country. We are not doing something that is out of step or out of order.
Lies.
Doesn't make it right.
Wrong.
We dismiss right now, please leave.
We'll go ahead and make
You're
it.
transphobes. It's disgusting.
That's my job to do tonight.
Maybe to make a comment. I'll help.
You're disgusting. You're sexualizing children.
That's what you're doing.
No, yeah, you are.
He is my son, my
It is-
child.
I don't care.
He's not sexualizing
You did it for
anybody.
your husband out here at Broken because he's getting up and being rowdy.
Yeah, and he's coming
Yeah.
towards me. I feel sorry.
I'm doing very sometimes.
I am feeling very threatened by him and I work with the code.
You go.
I don't care.
Ladies and
I
gentlemen,
am here at a public meeting.
order.
No, okay, then I'm calling the police.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're calling the police right now. You need to understand. It just shows authority and prevents the disruption of the public meeting.
Hypocrites, disgusting, transphones, sexualizing transgender and queer children. It's disgusting. Shame!
Shame!
Good luck.
You need to leave. Ma'am, you with the phone that is being held up right now, you need to leave. We're disrupting this meeting. Oh, no, she was just yelling shame. She wants. Jeannine?
can we please get back to the
Oh, hold on 1 second. I am the president.
I
The
understand.
police are being
I
called.
understand.
The woman with the phone right there, she's a 1, 2, 3, 4 rows back coming in, needs to be asked to leave.
Right now.
Yes, I would.
So literally, the whole room erupted at the word shame, and you're gonna target one person for it, and you have no evidence.
Okay, so right now you're interrupting as well, okay? So it's just like, can you please leave the meeting?
I am participating in a meeting where I'm allowed to speak, and I am following. I'm allowed to speak.
The police are being called.
Let's call Sheriff Murphy. Endorsement for disgusting policy. So my comment in regards to policy, trying to ground us and focus us to specifically be speaking about the authoring of said policy and focusing the group back to the purpose of the meeting. So Nancy had a comment. So in regards to what the board does is we write and we author policy for the library director to execute. So So, we need to write a sentence that will enable Sarah to perform her job, and Nancy duly noted, and maybe there's an adjustment that's necessary per the decision of the library director to this convention. So, I go back to the purpose of the meeting and the focus of what the board is doing right now is offering a policy. So, in debate right now is this particular sentence. Materials may be labeled with non-adjustable, viewpoint neutral labels. So, we have to, as a committee, determine if this sentence remains, is struck, or is reworded. And then what Sarah can do is she can take this wording and then execute against it. So I'm trying to, I'm trying to move things along, keep us very, very focused on operating and doing the job that we're.
I think it makes sense.
Okay,
Move
thank
on
you.
from that. And Dawn, did you get that from us, right?
Police are on their way.
Yes, and I just wanna make sure they're not threatening, make sure we need to.
So I'm gonna go on to C.
I'm sorry.
Right, let's.
Yeah, it's just
Director is
I can speak for
You did, okay.
Becky, we should.
Michelle, so sorry, Bill, I'm sorry.
Becky, we should make a decision on this right now.
So, we're of the opinion that it should, juvenile should be struck, capital M should be inserted with an S at the end. I believe there's consensus on the board, but I'll pause to make sure Dawn has that, unless there's dissent.
Thank you, I had not heard that over the discussion, thank you very much.
Continuing on to letter C, the library director is responsible for overseeing where the books are shelved and cataloged. However, the library board recommends that any materials that are appropriate for adults or older teens, and this is a sentence that has been recommended to be struck out, but may be considered valuable to minors, so that's been struck out, as defined by the Library Privacy Act, are shelved within the adult collection. And then subsequently, the other proposed language is as defined by state law, specifically MCL 722.674, section 4, instead of the Library Policy Act. Library Privacy Act. So that's the two paragraphs in debate.
Item C,
then,
item C under the NASH version is different.
There's that version is different.
Okay,
Yes.
and then read
So let me read that one. The library director is responsible for overseeing where the books are shelved and cataloged, subject to the library board's review of challenges, because that's where this goes to the end. Challenges under section 9 of this policy. Materials that are appropriate for adults or older teens but may be considered harmful to minors as defined by the Library Privacy Act shall be shelved within the adult collection.
I think that's good wording. I think it's wording we should adopt.
So my opinion is citing a law and citing an act seems very robust, which I think the shift of the policy does go more towards the board reviewing and challenging it, the materials. And so,
Okay.
I think we have to have a definition, like, it's just the conversation we had a few minutes ago.
Right, and
The
Becky,
more subjective something is, right, the more disorder will be. This is a definition of what is appropriate.
right,
Otherwise, that's going to be broadly.
right, and it refers us to section 9 of this policy, which I think is more than appropriate. It gives us an internal guidance system that I think is meritorious for our consideration.
And according to the flow of the policy, the library director will be in charge of where things are shelved unless something is brought to the challenge and goes all the way to challenge, goes all the way to the board. And then this actually gives the board ability again to challenge if there's an alternate decision that incorporates that in that as well.
Right, and the board may or may not uphold the director's decision. It would
Right, I
then,
think it should be, maybe instead of shall be, we had a discussion a couple of years ago that we're not ordering,
I like the word shall be. It is very defined, it gives a defined action, an actionable item for the director.
Yeah, and the change was from our shall to shall be, I mean.
It's what we did, right?
And the difference between when we were talking about C at the committee level was there was a question of the Library Privacy Act or the state law. The library, after that meeting, I went and read it, and the Library Privacy Act refers to that, which is how I actually am looking at challenges right now. So there's a 4-point test for what is considered harmful to minors. It's a legal term. So.
I think we need the definition.
Yeah, so keeping the Privacy Act in there makes the most sense, because it's the library law,
Right,
so it's more specific.
and the shall be is definitely directive, which I think is more appropriate than may. Shall is very directive, and that removes the ambiguity in the decision-making process from Sarah that can put her in a difficult position. And it is our job to make sure that we mitigate that as much as possible to allow her to do her job.
So is everyone okay with the Library Privacy Act being the verbiage?
Yeah, I rescind my comment, I'm sorry.
Okay, got it, okay, good.
I think it's great verbiage.
And we add the language as an appendix, that's what we're doing. So people would have that definition.
All the
Well, yeah, that's an easy one, the actual stuff, like it's a footnote or.
Yeah, sure. I think that's right. Yeah. Good suggestion, Holly.
So for item C, we were talking about reading it. The library director is responsible for overseeing where the books are shelved and cataloged, subject to the library board's review of challenges to materials brought under section 9 of this policy. Materials that are appropriate for adults or older teens, as defined by the Library Privacy Act, and then put that in, further down, shall be shelved within the adult collection.
I think that's good. I think that's a great issue.
We will add an appendix.
And then at the end of the appendix, the policy of the,
Library Policy Act is.
I think that's good verbiage. By all means.
Continuing, shall
Yeah, please.
Are we all in agreement on that?
is everybody, we can move forward.
Do we want to vote on each one?
Who's taking
We're okay with it, right?
I think if everybody takes it, we won't miss anything, and then of course, we'll do a clean code.
Yeah. So letter D, further, okay, I'm gonna start with the unredacted. Further, library materials will not be marked or identified to show approval or disapproval of contents, and no catalog book or other item will be sequestered except for the express purpose of protecting it from injury or death. The use of rare and scholarly items of great value may be controlled to the extent required to preserve them from harm, but no further. So here's proposed. Further, library materials will not be marked or identified to show approval or disapproval of contents. Stop, and then the remaining piece of that sentence has been struck out, that I just read. So no catalog, yes,
So striking that sentence out allows per policy for books to be sequestered, which is illegal and unconstitutional. So I do not believe that that should be struck. That is a highly risky thing.
Can we read it?
yeah.
Let me do
Is
the
it
one.
your-
Yes.
Let me do the one that I brought together. So, and we can change this, but this is another version. Further, library materials will not be marked or identified to show approval or disapproval of contents. Library materials may be labeled to notify patrons that the materials may contain age-inappropriate material.
What is the definition of inappropriate?
That would probably be according to library policy.
No, it's not.
Or no, I'm sorry, no, age-inappropriate.
So I have, so Alex, what else? Just to address sequestered or shelved, we need to make provision for this type of materials, so just FYI, that's how it works.
Right.
That's the rare
the type of material she's talking about is the rare books that you're seeing around you, the rare protected older materials, yeah.
And then, I actually had thoughts in regards to the term in age-appropriate materials. I believe this is a subjective term, which, and so anybody can interpret it. My thought process, and, I'm sorry, excuse me, there's like a couple places or maybe two that this age-appropriate term is referenced. My thought is that I'll tell you my thought process and see if I make sense to you guys. So, I think that we utilize the wording that matches how the books are being evaluated, because there's criteria listed in here, and the criteria is a more description and factual type of terminology, and it said explicit language, graphic violence, sexually explicit material. So substituting age appropriate for a more quantitative term, if you will, versus non-subjective was a thought process I had. Because I too am uncomfortable with age appropriate.
I like that.
I'm fine with that.
So you would strike that word and how would you?
I think we should go by law.
And I don't know what it is, so if there is one, but maybe that's appropriate too.
Well, the harmful to minors, is that what you're thinking of, Holly?
Yes.
So that is not about age appropriateness, that's about, there's like 4 points. And I don't think that's what they're talking about here. I'm not sure. So age appropriate isn't legally defined, so that was my question. You picked that language, which later in the one that your person suggested, they said those things.
Which you guys are going to find.
But then what, explicit language, what does that mean? Swear words, or just very specific genitalia words?
That was my
Yeah.
suggestion. That was my suggestion. I'm sorry. That was, it's kind of included in the sexually explicit material, explicit language, right? I was thinking the same thing. So how many words is gonna be?
But I have questions about explicit, because parenting books have explicit language, but it's not, what is explicit? It means specific.
And some,
Which is where the age inappropriate or age appropriate
that's still highly
designation,
subjective.
of course it is.
So,
But
but in
the-
this policy, it shouldn't be highly subjective, it should be very defined.
And so I'm okay with including a more fine point definition. I'm okay with that, or leaving it a little broader. I'm all right with either one. So if you want to add in language that is more definitive, as you're suggesting, I would be okay
So
with
you
that.
would say.
What was the wording that you suggested? Sorry,
Library
the other section.
Or G.
I suggest substituting age appropriate with the terms explicit language, graphic violence, or sexually explicit material.
Why don't we just say graphic violence and sexually explicit material?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because the other, that's pretty less subjective than you'll say based on
And sexually explicit material would be the legal definition of sexually explicit material. There is, there is a definition.
I don't know if that's true either.
At federal
There's
law level, there
obscene.
is.
There is for obscenity. The
Obscenity.
word obscenity.
Well, we had that debate
That's
2 years ago, remember Becky, it was like, we see it, but that's not a legal definition,
No,
Right,
right?
and right now, throughout the culture, there are challenges to this that are happening. I don't want to do waste of course, and we'll see what the ultimate outcome is.
So,
So you would say, sorry, so as I'm kind of like, okay, so you would say okay, so we're going with item D. Further materials will not be marked or identified to show approval or disapproval of the contents. Library materials may be labeled to notify patrons that materials may contain graphic violence and sexually explicit material, period.
It could be
Or sexually material. And then, no catalog book or other item will be sequestered, shelved outside of the, how did you, what were you looking for words of that?
I'm uncomfortable with the word sequester, but placing them in the adult section where we are empowering the parents to help with guidance is more than appropriate, and knowing that any child can go into the adult area and check the book out. We do not ask for their ID when they go in to check the book out.
So you would say, no catalog book or other item will be shelved outside of the juvenile, young adult, or reference collections, except for the express purpose of protecting it from the injury or theft. The use of rare and scholarly items of great value may be controlled to the extent required to preserve them from harm.
I mean, that's fine, I think we're kicking the can down to a discussion of going through book by book and making it session explicit. But
Because we don't have, I don't disagree.
Well, we don't have to,
Objective.
because the public will inform us,
exactly.
right? I mean, they'll just challenge those and then it's not.
Possibly not.
My question is, I'm confused to execute this, because I understand what we just said, makes sense. I'm not clear what I'm hearing about the adult section and restriction. So the word sequester has been removed, which makes me happy as well. But I'm confused about the statement you made last time, Jeannine, we had to clarify on what Bill just said. Is it a gesture by putting some book in adult, but knowing it's not restricted? Or do you want it restricted and think there's a way I can do that?
No, I think that if a book is challenged and we deem that it is appropriate to accept the challenge, we do not want to remove them from the library, but placing them in an adult section gives just one more obstacle, or not obstacle, I don't even want to say obstacle, it gives one more definition for a parent, they can be quiet, thank you very much, for a parent to have the ability to grant guidance to their child.
So that's the part that confuses me.
And parents are their own adults. They may not act like adults, but typically they're adults.
But when you say in an adult section, you mean the first floor of the library? Is our adult section.
I would assume that would be then where we want to place them.
And so the onus would be on the parents to know if your kid gets this book from that section, you should look at it. Like, how are we helping the parent? Because Jeannine made the point that a child can go get a book there.
Sure, thank you.
And check it out. So as long as I'm not telling my staff they have to say, you can't.
Well, we would not want the staff to do that
Okay.
under any circumstances. That's not their job.
So the word restricted is kind of metaphorical.
Metaphorical in terms of putting it into the adult section, so that parents have the opportunity to easily guide their child through book selection, and I think that's more than appropriate.
I would like to read something from the case that John quoted last month. This is the one where the library lost the lawsuit about reading books. Another of defendants, so that was the library. Another of defendants' arguments is that the First Amendment had not been violated here because the books in question have not been removed from the library, but rather have simply been relocated to a different area which is still accessible to all patrons. And this is coming from the court. This makes no difference for purposes of the First Amendment. That didn't stand up in court a few months ago. So I would imagine it did not stand up in court for us either.
Possibly.
I would like to address that. So that case is actually where I brought one of my arguments that says that we can do what we're saying we can do. It's part of the same judgment from the same judge. And they talked about, there was a book moved to the adult section that contained a sex act. It was a concern that minors would be able to access it. They didn't rule against that. They ruled against taking books away that people didn't agree with the ideology. That's what they were ruled against. And that's why it says, it is unquestionably true that the First Amendment permits public libraries to restrict minors' access to materials that are not age appropriate. So they're using a vague terminology. But while these restrictions will inevitably be content-based, they must be viewpoint neutral. So they're not saying that you can't move a book because it has sexual content into the adult section. That is not where they won this case. They won this case because they were prejudicial against a group of people and moved those books to a separate section. We are not asking for that. This does not apply to this.
100% of the books on that challenge list are about a particular population. I have a list of emails from community members that match the same language that is directly quoted in this case. Right? We are at extreme legal risk if we go through this challenge process and books based off of this challenge list with something that is very, very clearly targeted at a group of people results in books being moved.
We are only going to move books that are inappropriate for children. That's what our policy is about.
What
It
does that
doesn't
mean?
It doesn't matter what books were challenged. What matters is that we follow the law and we are able to move books that are inappropriate. And it even says age appropriate from the judge in the judgment. It says that it's clearly not violating the First Amendment.
But
The amendment proposes it is one thing to restrict minors' access to sexually explicit material, but a different thing to restrict access to unpopular opinions.
Yes.
So this policy is addressing what the judge says we are allowed to do. It is not us being transphobic or anti-homosexual. It is not my opinion. It is not going to get through anything that comes to judgment to me. This is not about religion. This is not about people being phobic about anybody. This is about doing things properly, the legal way, so that everybody can be able to find what they need and people can read what they want to read. Because that is the point of the library, and we're going to collaborate to make that happen.
When they do discovery, they're going to go through all of our emails from the community members, and there is a very, very clear message from the community members about why this is being done. And it is the same that is quoted in here, same language, and you're right, you are allowed to buy the sexually explicit definition, but most of the books, I would argue all of the books, there might be one or two, don't meet that definition, are going to come up for review. And I don't trust that the majority of this board will keep them in the place that they are. Some people are going to want to move anything that they deem inappropriate, not by legal definition, but by their personal opinion. And they come in and do discovery and see all of these things in calls to the public, in emails, the comments made in our strategic plan data book. We're going to end up with this, right? I'll read actually what the sentence you wrote too. The fact that viewpoint discrimination was a substantial motive to the creation and maintenance of the social section has profound First Amendment implications. Just to be clear, there's evidence that viewpoint discrimination was not the only motivation for creation and maintenance of the social section. For example, there was concern about what was sexually explicit. For First Amendment purposes, it is one thing to restrict minors' access to sexually explicit material, but a very different thing to restrict minors' access to unpopular opinion. Here, the undisputed evidence using the language in the quoted case that is in our public, in our documents, shows that the social section was created not only for the former purpose, but also for the latter, which violates the First Amendment. So if this board is going to guarantee that we will only vote to move any book that meets the legal definition of sexually explicit, then I think we're okay. But if we're going to vote on books that some people personally think are inappropriate, we will not be okay, and we will be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars that should be going to our outdoor project.
Right, and if we go by the definition here and put in the wording sexually explicit material, like we have talked about, do you need us to put a further definition of
I would
it?
like a further legal definition that we're going to go by, because otherwise it is a personal interpretation, and we're going down an extensive path.
So my question is, I thought I heard there is no such thing as a definition of sex, please.
There's a federal definition, I don't need to bring it with me, so you can email it.
Federal definition of.
Actually, I can look it up.
It'd be,
Another Michigan definition is
Right.
that thing we refer to earlier.
the law firm that I've been talking to, when they looked at this this case, they did say it supports our decision and actions.
And
Just
I
as
think
well
what
as
we've been
indicated.
talking about was the point of my question about if we move things to adult, where in adult? Just to the cat, like if it's fiction, and the last name is Walter Smith, do I just put a kid's book in the S's? Or are we putting them in a special section? That's my question.
I wouldn't put it in this, okay, so if we get a specific definition here for sexually explicit material, how it's written by federal law, and then if it needs to be moved, it would be as to how, if it's a fiction with Smith, then you would move it to that section to, you know, where it should be correctly cataloged with that. But not like a, not like a specific area for something, and
That's what
I don't
think
believe
here.
anyone's intent is to put books into a specific area or to put books behind glass or behind a shelf where people, or behind the desk.
Those were all kind of silly, so I was just making sure.
Right.
But as I wasn't here when those discussions happened, I am ignorant to those discussions. I simply know from my perspective that us granting parents greater control and a greater capacity of making decisions for their children is a wise thing. Particularly in our culture at this time, what is happening within the judicial system in multiple areas, we are undergoing a cultural transition, a backlash of some of the things that transpired, and we are going to see a different outcome simply because of what is transpiring within the judicial system. I've been keeping abreast of what they are indicating needs to be prosecuted. And they are making some very strong statements right now in our culture.
So do you have, okay.
Section, it's section 23, United States Code, minor refers to any person under the age of 18 years. Sexually explicit conduct means actual or simulated, sexual intercourse, bestiality, masturbation, sadistic or masochistic abuse, or lascivious exhibition of the genitals or pubic area. That book should be in adults.
Right. Correct.
So,
Okay,
I'm
so
using that
so
definition.
what if we put, okay, so what if we worded it, contain graphic violence or sexually explicit material as defined as, just as this defined as this definition, here you go. Would that be a good way to word it? Would you feel that that's a good way to word it as well?
That's how I've always understood it.
Okay, well,
But if kids have sex in a teen book, and there's no, then it
If
goes.
there's no graphic depiction.
That's how I've always viewed it, but it's not a question.
Right, the
that was what
graphic
is
depictions
okay
are what
according
many
to this.
parents object to.
So we would need to rewrite that down again or something unless someone's taking
Yeah, I can.
or for a clean copy and then, okay.
So you feel like there's no pictures? It could be just description.
Oh, no, it can
Right.
describe absolutely words, illustrations, photographs, there are multiple.
Right.
So,
They all basically fall into that category.
okay, so if we're looking for item D, under general principles, it would read, further library materials will not be marked or identified to show approval or disapproval of contents. Library materials may be labeled to notify patrons and the materials may contain graphic violence or sexually explicit material defined as, actual or the proper definition.
I would
Defined
actually
as.
include the statute.
Well, that's
Yeah.
right, defined as the statute.
That's right. I think that's right.
Okay, so read it like that, and then it would go on, then it would go on to say, no catalog book or other item will be shelved outside of the juvenile, young adult, or reference collections, except for the express purpose of protecting it from injury or theft. The use of rare and scholarly items of great value may be controlled to the extent required to preserve them from harm.
So I have a question about that. That language was suggested by the ADF lawyer, and I think they had, well, there's no note here. There was a note that they were like, if there's other, we have more collections than that. So it's being specific about juvenile, young adult, adult, and adults.
Oh, so.
And we have multiple more. So I think we should be more vague.
Should we strike that?
I think the point is it won't be sequestered.
Right.
So we could go back to the original language in that part without juvenile, young adult, adult, since we have other, well, I mean, broadly,
Well, we could just go back to saying,
we
okay,
have a
right.
teen section, we have a graphic novel section, we have a blah, blah, blah section, and yes, it's meant, but I mean, if we be specific, I want them all in there. But I add them all the time, if we just added a literature, you know, for the kids that have trouble with reading. So I think it should go back to, they won't be sequestered except for the express purpose of attending parents read them. And I remember seeing it on it, but I don't know where that one is.
So then you would add that, okay, so just go back to then, after the definition, no catalog, book, or other item will be sequestered except for the express purpose of protecting it from injury or theft. The use of the rare and scholarly items of great value may be controlled to the extent required to preserve them from harm but no further. Is that what everyone agree with?
I like
Going
that
back to
sentence, right?
I would agree
Owning
with
some rare books that.
Right.
you know,
These-
that-
these-
It covers.
That's the
Right,
original.
right. Okay. Okay.
Rare books need to be protected.
That brings us to E under section 5. Okay, let me see how to do this. Okay, I'm gonna read 2 paragraphs.
Why not others? Are there
It's not
changes?
Yes, yes.
Should we
It
just-
deals with, so sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, because I don't see any more.
There were no changes on 5.
Well,
So there was, in this one version, the section about use of words, scholarly items was moved to E, but if it is remaining D, we don't use that.
Right. So strike that.
Yeah, so just the original.
so that way, go back.
I'm getting nervous about the notes.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's what the clean copy is for.
That's what they clean copy for.
So you will leave item E, I'm sorry, so 5, item E, we will leave it the same. And we don't have to put the use of rare, we just say it is the responsibility of the library to provide circulating reference and research materials for the public and students based on the service it is expected for. Don't change that, we're not changing that, we're not striking that, correct?
That's correct.
I will, and we can seriously decide. All right, sorry, go ahead, Becky.
Shall I continue? Alright, shall we continue? Roman numeral 6, specific principles for selection. There's been no changes to that. Roman numeral 7, gifts,
No change.
no changes. Roman numeral 8, maintenance of collection, no changes. Okay, here we go. 9, challenges to materials. Alright, there's different versions, so let me just start reading. Okay, if I'm going to read the modified version, here. If a patron objects to material owned by the library, they may complete a request for reconsideration form for submission to the director. The patron submitting the request must be a resident of the Cromaine District Library Service area and hold a pre-existing patron card. That's added language, and then no material shall be removed from the library's collection until all steps in the following process have been completed.
Okay, so just a quick, if that's okay, that language right there came from committee. Okay, so the entire committee thought that they were going to present that language to the board. And Sarah had suggested that too, along with, I believe, the lawyer, I'm not quite sure, we just, that sounded better.
I like the information.
Right.
We thought it would be appropriate that it was really challenged by actual patrons in the library. We don't have people come from outside communities trying to tell our community what should be challenged.
Seems logical to me.
Yeah, it seems logical to me.
And holding the library card.
Right, we're the ones who pay the millage, so.
So, just to compare, the request for reconsideration form that we asked patrons to fill out has on it that have you examine the entire resource, which I'm not sure what that means. Does that imply that they have read the whole book? And this lady that submitted 220 reconsiderations has read all those books? I don't think so, but I'm just bringing it up because if we're gonna have this in a policy, it should be clear that you have to read the material in order to object to it. And one of the ones I will say on the list, it says it's on order, so we haven't even got it in our collection, is what I understand.
One of the
Anyway,
things
that's an aside.
I was gonna suggest is if, when we come to a new policy or an updated policy, we'll have to look at that form as well. Because it's separate, it's staff form, but I think it will be changed a little bit.
Well, it should be in our policy if we're saying to somebody who wants to contest a book, that they should know that they have to read it first.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
don't
on
know, I
there.
mean, I suppose you don't want it.
Please, in the audience, please, this is a board meeting, you will have a time to speak at the end,
I
and
believe
at
the
the end you may speak, if you filled out the form. Thank you.
I believe the process has been that Sarah hands out the form to have the patient come and speak with her first, so they can have a conversation about this, just as part of the process, so people can download it and so that it's like a challenge, so they need to come in and actually talk about the book. And then Sarah, if they're not satisfied, based on the challenge form.
Definitely, we would want to make sure that whatever form looks like, it follows what the policy says, and we should, make it the best we can, but we want the spirit of the policy to be accurate.
Yeah, so it looks like this was last revised in 22, so.
I think we should finish this first.
Yeah,
And
I
then
do.
yeah, but I completely agree with you on that.
But it should be revised, I think you all agree with that.
So if we're going along with the policy here, so challenges to materials, does everyone agree with adding a patron objects to materials? So that's a go. There's no change in item A, no change in item B, no change in item C. Where there were suggested possible changes would be D. And I don't know, after we kind of switched it earlier, so D,
Can I ask clarification on, item C, on the two forms, they are different. One has more verbiage and the other does not. So I'm assuming that we just did not properly mark the inclusion of the material. Item C, on one that says a request for wishes to carry the request further, the director will provide a request for a copy of the material section, including the request for consideration of library materials, in brackets, request for
Which
consideration.
version are you reading out?
And then on the mashup,
That's because
both
AI
of the
added
same,
something.
both the
Yeah,
same.
they're both the same,
These
the
ones are
ones
both the
coming
same.
out of committee were both
This
the
is
same.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This guy.
this one is.
Right, that's the different one.
That's
What I
the
was saying is, it's item C on both of these ones was the same.
It is different on the one Don did, and I don't know if you had it or.
Yeah, that's the one that,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
right,
Okay.
because the one that Don submitted,
Oh, if the request
Does
for
read
wishes to
differently.
consider.
there's an added sentence, a separate request for reconsideration form must be completed and signed for each library material challenge, specifying the reasons for the objection. I think that's a meritorious sentence, and adding that in, I think, is more than appropriate.
But
It's just-
it kind of says that here right now, the requester wishes to carry the request further, that they're gonna provide the requester with a form.
The police are here,
Okay.
so I have to go talk to them. But I don't want to miss it. We take a recess.
We can take a recess.
Yeah, we'll take a recess. It's good to meet you. Okay, friends, all this back in order. Please take your seats. Sarah's going to make a statement about the presence of sheriffs. Excuse me, please. Thank you very much. That goes for everyone in the room. Sarah's going to make a comment as the police were called, and she's going to make a comment about their presence and why they are going to remain here.
So I did request that a few of the sheriff's officers stay through call of the public so we can just have our peace and get out. They've asked me nicely if I would explain that they're not here to be scary or suppress anyone's right to speak. Yeah, so I can go that way.
This is yours.
They're here to help us maintain order, okay? So if people do get out of order, they can be asked to leave, they will not be arrested, they just will be removed from the property, okay? So, I don't want that to happen, so let's just get through this part of the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, officers. We appreciate you.
So, we were discussing on item C. So which version of this, there was a change with the other one that John had submitted. And getting that extra line, a separate request for reconsideration form must be completed and signed for each library material challenge, specifying the reasons for the objection. So that was kind of a little bit more
I like
clear.
that wording.
As a
How
copy
do
of
you
you.
feel about that?
How do you?
Has it been a problem?
No, but it's not a bad idea.
Right, it's
Okay.
good wording, good verbiage.
Okay.
I would recommend that we include that verbiage into the item. Are there any objections to that?
Item C.
Can you read the section over?
So, okay, so for item C, challenges to materials, A and B, there were no changes. So item C would be, if the requester wishes to pursue the matter further, the director will provide a copy of the material selection policy, including the request for reconsideration of library materials form. In parentheses, request for reconsideration. A separate request for reconsideration form must be completed and signed for each library material challenge, specifying the reasons for the objection.
I think it's a good sentence.
All right.
So,
It came from our lawyer.
okay, that's a good sentence. I think it's more than appropriate.
Okay, so then on to D. So this goes to, okay, so in these two versions that we had, there were no changes whatsoever. The two versions that we had originally. In the AI version, we're getting back into that age appropriateness, and is that even something we want to?
It's already covered.
It's already covered earlier in the policy, so are we okay with keeping D as written? Once a completed signed copy of the request for reconsideration for each library materials received, the library director shall decide the request for reconsideration, taking into consideration the library's material selection policy and any other relevant information to such a decision. The director may consult with any other staff or consultants when making this decision.
I think sticking with the original is fine.
Original?
Right, because, again, we did cover that material in the earlier section, so it is clearly defined. I think that is, it's appropriate to start that from, that addition from the language. So that would be my opinion.
On to E. No changes with E, but under E with the other one,
Right in the mashup, right?
in the mashup, it's kind of goes on to,
Let's read.
okay, so E. Starts off, the library director shall send a written decision to the requester within 75 days of receiving each completed request for reconsideration form. The decision may result in one of the following actions. This is the revised, and let's just see where we go. The actions, removal. If the material is deemed inappropriate for the collection, the requester will be notified in writing and all copies will be withdrawn. Retention. If the material is to be retained, the requester will be notified in writing. If the director determines the material contains age-appropriate content, which I think we need to kind of switch that because it's kind of
Right, to bring that into compliance with the already
with earlier.
citing the appropriate language.
The material will be
I would say bring it into compliance with the state.
Yeah, but I don't remember what we said before. So I got notes. What were the words we used before?
If material contains graphic signs or sexually explicit
Material.
As defined by.
as defined
Is
by.
there a
That's defined by
is there a
federal.
definition of graphic violence? I'm just curious.
Federal law.
Yeah,
Sure there
thanks.
is.
Or was the powerful influence.
So we reduced the words there from earlier.
So,
I think that's appropriate.
And then it says, and this is one thing within the pink that the EDF legal council suggested, okay. Relocated to the adult collection to restrict access to minors while maintaining availability to adults. I don't think we should do that personally, but this is up for discussion here.
Yes.
I mean, I think it makes sense to define,
Because it's defined earlier as to
Right.
where it's going to be.
well, like
Right.
define renewable
Right.
retention, whatever the
Right.
options are, I think it
Right.
makes sense to define those, but.
Right, as we've already defined that, that the material can be placed in the adult section. And so this is redundant.
So we don't need that.
No, we don't, it's a redundant statement, there's no reason for it. If everyone's in agreement, I think striking that line would be more than appropriate.
So these are defining the library director's decision options? Are they not?
yes.
Or is it correct?
Yes, removal retention,
Removal retention.
and then really we don't have to say the other two, because that's.
Right, because we've already,
So are we taking off the language for label?
that's.
Okay, so
Well,
then,
so- Yeah, that was my question, because staff does move books based on their professional opinion and appropriateness, like that's why they have a master's degree, so. Like, I would wanna make sure that the staff still has the professional flexibility to do
But
that.
we're talking about the challenge.
Just-
Yeah, this is,
Right.
yeah, this
If
is.
you've already not done it,
right.
and then I met with someone and offered to move it, and it still didn't meet their satisfaction, that would be better.
Okay.
So it doesn't need to be laid out there, and I'm curious about the next sentence.
Labeled on the front cover with this book may contain age inappropriate material. Cromaine District Library. Who's to determine what's age inappropriate?
Right, that's the problem, and then having it on the front of the cover, I think would be prejudicial and, stigmatizing, yes.
Or do you want it to say, well,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know, please,
Offer your
please,
opinion.
I think that yes.
no, you can be quiet. Labeled on, because we're talking about labeling, you could use that language you've been using, sexually explicit or graphic violence, which is a warning to parents.
I think that's great. I think that's a great suggestion.
But it doesn't need to be put there, it could just be a thing that the staff can start doing and have it happen.
I actually think placing a label that indicates that is in compliance with our policy directives, it's not inappropriate.
So maybe it should be small.
So you can
it
say,
doesn't seem, because I think there's a question, that's my question. I don't know about a cover label. I've seen libraries put them on the inside of the front cover, but then the parent has to open the book, and it seems like a lot of parents feel overburdened by that. I'm not making a joke.
To me, that's,
But inside it could say contains mature content, whatever those words would be. I don't know if this is the spot for it though.
in my opinion, if a parent is not willing to look at what or open a book's cover, then we're talking about something that is rather inane. And I think placing a label that is in compliance with our policy, that is simple and
So maybe
succinct.
take out front cover.
I wanna go,
Yeah.
I feel front cover, just from a pure defacing perspective, that's how I feel. I just say a front cover,
Because this is new language that
Is
was
it?
suggested
Yeah.
by that council, and I don't like it. So I think we should think about, that was my question, is it's kind of procedural.
So maybe internally on the front jacket.
Just, if you're gonna say it, you can say label, that's a
Yeah.
city
parents just wanna know, I don't think they need it to be in their face, so that anybody who's checking on the house, the go up has a giant sticker on the front. I think it to, in an effort to collaborate and try to, you know, work together, I think it isn't too much to ask them to look inside. That's how I feel.
Right,
So I don't think it has to.
I can go either way in that. You know, I stamp all my books with the numbers so that everyone knows it belongs to me. I never do it on the outside, I saw it on the inside.
So would you put it,
You have to look inside to know who owns it. The 8,900 books I have in my library, they're marked.
And we would leave it open-ended.
Just say label.
just say, don't say where?
I mean, especially if there's kind of where people are going with the Lakeland that way, I think that would be better for a legal standing.
So how we would word that would say, after because we just say label with,
This book may contain graphic violence or sexually explicit. Cromaine District Library. Is it this
So-
word?
yep,
Is that what it is?
just like we
Certainly.
have.
Say it again.
This book may, label, this book may contain graphic violence or sexually explicit material, Cromaine District Library.
So just for the record, this is directly in violation of what our attorney has told us in 2 letters, as well as all the board members received a letter from ACLU. Labels are about putting censorship and stigmatizing. And it's like, who are we to say what you can read? I think it's a violation of the First Amendment, and I know the board is heading this direction, but I think it should be on the record that we have been advised that this is high risk, and this could cost this library a lot of money.
And I would also remind the board that the law firm that I have been speaking with, if we decide to retain them, they will, they would retain us. We can retain them.
What are you doing?
Yes.
Intimidation from the table.
So do we want to, because this was a suggestion here for doing this, books are labeled, do we want to put that in there, labeled, this would be with the whole challenge, that's where this is coming from. Okay, so this is the part, the 3 things for the book challenge.
Right.
But it's also an option and for staff to do ahead of time.
Correct,
But
correct,
only if we see it, feel like it needs to.
correct.
Usually, things happen before a challenge, where you have tools at your disposal to answer before it goes to that. So,
But this is up to the staff, it's not, it's up to the staff and it's up to the director to make this decision.
Yeah, because it
Right.
gives options, is how I feel it.
and it's a change, because before I'd say we're keeping it or it's closed.
Right.
And then the challenge should only be to you to keep it or to remove it. So now you're saying, keep it, remove it, just to be clear.
How does everyone feel about that? That's the purpose of discussing it.
Right, I'm fine with that.
I don't know about books, but people read books, but I think it's better to have an option.
Okay.
Options are always great. It gives boards flexibility and allows us a better ability to grant direction to our director.
I support that.
I support it.
Okay. So we're gonna put the wording down, label, this book may contain graphic violence or sexually explicit material, Cromaine District Library.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Could you say Cromaine District Library has determined?
I don't think we want to use that language. I mean, me personally, I don't think that would be advisable.
Why don't we say the board of the library is subject to the adoption process? Because the staff wants,
But then, and we do have to avoid the ability of the options.
Well, we haven't gotten that yet,
We have to
Right.
because it's still an option, so say I don't choose to, because I don't believe it fits those 2 things. Then then the person comes back to the board and say, no, I still want it, or no, I still want blah, blah, blah. And then you all have to decrease. So I think we should look at F and G.
I have one more change, but it shouldn't be controversial.
No. To that one right there, to D, you said.
To
E.
Right, is the one we're talking about.
Right, and what do you think?
So the 75 days of receipt, the library director shall send a decision in writing to the plan with 75 days of receipt of each completed. Should we put something in there to like, because if Sarah receives 200 and then somebody else the next day challenges another 150, at some point, 75 days is not enough. So, like,
Can request additional time for review.
or the board can grant additional time.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Right, where, as a board, sure, us having the flexibility, because of inordinate high number of challenges. And, challenges can happen from any quarter, and that's something we need to be aware of and be willing to give due consideration to.
So you would say the library director shall send the decision in writing to the complainant within 75 days of the receipt of each complaint request for reconsideration. The board
May extend
may
this
extend.
time in extenuating circumstances, or.
There's language at the end of F you could copy.
Right.
The option to extend if necessary.
Right.
But it's already in there.
Right.
But that's for the board, so it could say the director may request an extension.
I like that.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
so
the
that
director-
so that you have the ability to request, absolutely.
Yes, because I don't right now, it would be nice.
Right,
So we
and,
should say the director has the opportunity.
and then we as a board would have the ability to either grant you the extension or to deny it, and that would be our prerogative.
The director may request.
An additional extension if necessary in order to fully evaluate the material, just echo the language.
I like that.
Right, so she may request, and that doesn't mean that it would be granted, but, that.
And I'm not
May
requesting-
request the board.
I'm not requesting a challenge, I'm requesting.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand,
Yeah.
and that's reasonable. That's our supervisors, to be that, we were obviously, right, so yes, that makes complete sense.
Right, we're almost there.
Nothing was changed on that, correct?
Nothing has changed.
No.
Nothing has changed.
Yay.
G. On all three of the versions of G, it says the library board serves as a final authority in cases involving retention, labeling, or withdrawal of library materials. But there's several different changes here.
Right, in the mashup one, it reads, in the yellow, reshelving, labeling, instead of labeling or withdrawal. I think the addition of the word reshelving is appropriate.
Right, because we moved into the adult section.
Yeah, I think adding that word is advisable. I think it's reasonable.
Relocating?
Or relocating.
Reshelving, relocating, which do you prefer,
Relocating
Sarah?
is something else.
Okay, so
Okay, so
what
relocating.
makes more sense to you then? Relocate, sure.
Just a question out of curiosity, since everybody here has said that they would not go to ban or remove, why is withdrawal?
Yeah, we could just take it out of the policy.
Yeah, that was something that pre-existed, so you tell me.
Right, in the policy, we can take it out now.
Right, we could. You've been on the board a lot longer than me, and so I would assume that you were part of the crafter of that language. So,
Honestly, I would absolutely agree with that, and I think that would resolve some of the maybe challenges that maybe shouldn't be challenges, because people don't understand the spirit of what we're trying to do and trying to be fair to everyone. So I'm okay with removing that, because I would actually never vote to remove it.
but I am too. I didn't craft it. I wouldn't have used that language. I think that's an appropriate language for a library, and taking that word out, that makes sense to me.
So we got retention and withdrawal.
No, it just, I would say striking the word withdrawal.
Because you may, so the library board is the final authority on decisions involving retention, relocating, and labeling of materials.
Right, as we need to be mindful of the First Amendment and the protections that it affords.
So labeling and.
So then we need to go back to E.
We have to change that.
Yeah.
And I'm
Until
taking.
And we could even be explicit and say this library will not remove materials, essentially.
It's a policy of the library.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want to go that far, simply because of something that did slip in that was,
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, like, so you're saying you would vote to.
if a librarian put something in that was against the law, that was against that which is legal status.
But you can't purchase anything that's legally obscene. It's not possible. So if it's legally obscene, we can't get it, so
Okay.
luckily we're protected from that.
So, interesting. In E,
So E, we'd have to take out, if the decision is to request materials to be retained, the request will, so just delete that sentence. Does everyone agree with that? So going back to E, we would strike, if the decision is that the question material is to be retained, the requester will be notified in writing by the library director that the material will be retained. Just striking that line. Right, so we went on to G, we changed it to G.
So if I could ask a question, I don't know if this is a great spot for it, but we're winding down, so maybe it is. Having spent so much time on 3010, you can all probably stay in your sleep. When we revisit this policy next year, which we do every year, and actually we're one of the few libraries, by the way, that does this on an annual basis. I just want to put out there, what are the metrics for success? I mean, what will we look at a year from now and say, wow, this was a good policy. You know, this worked, this didn't work. You know, what are the things? I mean, Tip sat on lots of United Way boards with me. And that's what we asked all the nonprofit agencies to come in and say, all right, what are you gonna do to change the world? And next year, if you want more money, you have to prove it. So I think it's a fair question to this board to say, how's this gonna make Cromaine Library a better library by passing this policy?
So here's a question I would ask you on sitting on that board. How many of those barn burner, let's change the world, where you want the money, you run the money, how many have actually achieved change? Probably very few.
No, actually a lot of them did.
That changed the world.
Change our world.
Yeah, and there's people doing good work in this. For me personally, I just see not looking at this policy again, it's a standard review in April of 25, that would feel like a success.
That would be great. You know, so we can move on to bigger and better things. Put our part together.
My opinion, but I don't know how we would measure it, and I would want to feel like everybody feels comfortable coming here and find what they want to read. And can choose to read what they want to. I want everybody to have the freedom to do that, and that's the goal for me. And I think it's actually the goal for most people.
I think that's
And I don't want people to be stigmatized at all. I'm actually offended when people call me names and say that I'm doing that. So for me, that would be successful, as well as moving on to other topics, so that we can work on other things that are important for this library to move forward.
Agreed.
So there's no real measurables though that you can come up with, that we could not spend this time again next year. This is what
I
I've
know
done.
that community survey that we did with the strategic plan, but that was a significant investment of time and money.
It was.
I guess we'll find out how next strategic plan. Yes.
And I just sort of like to be.
Okay.
Sorry.
Circle back.
Circle back.
We can circle back.
Circle back.
Thank you.
Okay, so getting back to the policy here. So do we want to, with the way the wording is there, item H is in a couple of these, but I don't believe that item H is that the library board determines materials shall have restricted act, we're not doing that. So we're going to need to include that. correct?
Correct.
So we would end it at G, correct, with the wording that we just had?
Yes, correct.
So we were changed to relocating instead of regional.
Right, so relocating, this ends at G. Oh my goodness. The policy, and then, wow, you guys ready? Drum roll here, item 10, revision of this policy. This policy shall be reviewed and revised to be consistent with the objectives of the library. And that always happens so are we good with it? Are we good with it that way?
And to be clear, we review every policy every year, we're not just looking at this policy, we do all of them. All right,
It's,
so
it is important to make note of that, yeah. It's,
We'll be getting a clean copy that hopefully all of the note takers.
Yes.
can review.
Yes, so by the next board packet, which will be next Friday, I will run it by Dawn and Nancy specifically, but I'll send it to everyone, and that way you can help.
if anybody can miss anything, it's.
This has not been super clear, but
And I was
it's been,
gonna, all right, and I was gonna take everything up and give it to, both.
Actually, don't give it to me, because I was let off the hook, remember? This is your.
Okay, this is me. Why not for fun, okay. Who would you like me to use for the board candidate? Okay, yeah, okay. So, all right.
very good work.
Thank you all. I would like to compliment all of us. Thank you for the.
Yes,
I just
absolutely.
want to follow up with Nancy's comment though, I do feel like after this, we need to revisit the form, so that we're clear with what we're gonna do and make sure it's consistent with the policy.
But we do have another item on the agenda.
Yes.
yeah,
And what about the
So-
pause that you're
so
on?
that was I put this bit on the agenda, so we currently have a number of materials. It's been hard to deal with at the same time, because it feels like it's all the same. Now that I have this directive, I need to go back through them, because I was using just harmful to minors as my criteria. Because that is the big part of that bit. So graphic violence or sexually explicit, you think would be easy, but I need graphic violence, I need research a little. I do understand sexually explicit. So, I don't know where we were, I can go back and look, because there's like a certain, we've done nearly every book. But I need to go back, so I'm gonna request a full 75 days.
After the policy is.
After the policy is approved. I think I can see where we are, I don't think it'll be terribly long, and that's just the maximum, I don't think it has to take that long.
So in the meantime, are all these books being kept off the shelf for all
No,
these
they're
months?
back in circulation. That is not part of the policy, but they have to be sequestered for all these challenge. But my question is, I don't think you should change the form until I finish this process, because I don't want to have to.
Right, there's two things,
Right,
in
right.
terms of you requesting, we have
Right.
not voted on this, so right now you don't have the ability to request. You can tell us that you would like an extension, at the next
At
board
the next
meeting.
meeting, but that's my thought.
Right.
But I feel like you should change the form to this one's put back, because I don't wanna overburden the process.
Right, and what I would hope you would do is between now and then, because we do want to honor the people who have challenged and not cause them to go back to square one. They are patrons, they are supporters of the library, they are people who utilize the library. And to disregard the guidelines we gave them and to just throw it out and say, we're starting all over again, doing a complete reset with another 75 days. To me, that does not bode well in terms of our opinion of patrons.
Well, we are following.
Additional part.
Yeah, they don't,
Right,
I'm saying
they're
not
not
to
doing
make
it.
them, if we do go by this, I'd have to redo it completely. But I'm willing to keep the current form and the current challenge.
Right,
Because I think it's thorough.
Right, and so my only comment on that is we gave them a 75-day limit, as per our policy, to then ask them to tell them we are granting another 75 days. That may be a bridge too far, in my opinion, simply out of
I
respect.
disagree, too. For the amount of work that, I'm sorry, for the amount of work that she has already put into this, and also our staff has put into this, the hours that they have put into this, and the research that they have done, I think we should grant more than 75 days extension if needed, because there's other things that they are doing as a daily basis within their positions as well, besides.
And it's summer reading.
And it's summer reading programs, everything else, we're trying to work on this,
Process wise, I think what I'll do, even though I know it hasn't been adopted, it sounds like it's gonna get, right, Thomas?
Like that.
Right.
Okay. No changes between now and the next meeting. I will go through the books that I assume might have content I need to look at. It will not be all of them, but it will be a good number.
So, let me ask you a question, because you've gone through the preponderance of books already, with the inclusion of the violence, the graphic violence, what percentage would you say that is in the books that you've already reviewed?
I don't know, because I wasn't looking for that.
Right.
So that's the whole, and I'm really glad we went away from explicit language, because that would have been every book. I really don't know, so that'll be something I'll have to ask staff.
And speaking to your issue on explicit language, if we were to apply that rule to the Bible would be excluded, as in the original language, there's some very explicit language that is utilized if you understand. And graphic violence, if you understand the original languages, so, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Because that's already done.
Right.
I do have a process question for the board portion of challenge process, right? Because the expectation from the challenger is that it will just be an automatic appeal to the board, which means, I don't know what percentage, but a significant number of books are going to be given to the board to review within a set amount of time. I presume we would all want to actually read the material.
Yes.
So for 7 of us to read 100 books within 60 days, like, well, and are we gonna chunk it out? Are we just doing an 8-hour marathon Saturday session? Like, what is that gonna look like? I don't know that we have to decide that tonight, but I think we need to plan ahead.
Right, that's a good point, and I would assume that our objective would be to do with these people who see those rejections. They took the material, divided up among them by the numbers of people that were involved in it, and that was their process. Am I mistaken on that?
Well, I as a board member would wanna read every single book. I'm not gonna make a decision, I mean, I wanna read every single, if that's what is required of us, then we have in our policy that states we can have an extension as well. So with a challenge of this amount of books, it is going to take the board months to do, as it has taken a long time for Sarah. This isn't gonna just go away quickly. I wanna do my due diligence and read through every single book, because I think that would just be unfair to the person that's doing the challenge or a group of people if I had, as a board member, read the books.
So we can maybe talk about that.
Yeah.
In committee.
Right, committee,
That's right. We did
come up with guidelines for us.
Right.
that
And maybe
will
we
follow.
like how to divide it, how to decide which
Right,
one first, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a lot of advice for that, because it's good tax.
Right, and with whatever comes out of the committee, like if you decide we're going to go through 20 books on a particular month or a particular week and make a decision, to do it in bite-size increments, that will leave that up to you. I think that's your guidance will be the appropriate plumb line. Yeah, I think it should.
I'm just gonna get a little podium, tell the public where it's coming from.
And for all of us.
Shouldn't the people that were kicked out actually be equal? Shouldn't Mr.
It
Gogoleski?
looks like we have come
I know, he's supposed to leave, I thought.
something that all of us are willing to vote on that.
They want to be involved in what I read. Join the book club, They'll still be reading by the time the week comes down next year, right? That's the whole process. That's right. Because they're still assuming the only people that are trying to do is literally that whole.
All right. Who would like to all right. If I can have your attention, first of all, if there's anyone else that wants to fill out a form to speak, as we are just about to go into the call to public, please make sure you fill it out, get it up to us so that we can acknowledge you, so that you can make your comments. Becky is going to be keeping time. You have 2 minutes to comment.
Two with the amount, we can look at that.
Oh, sure, so let's,
with the amount of call.
yeah, let's, because of, right,
I've never done that before.
right, because we have, let's, Dawn, hold on 1 second.
How many are there?
There's one. There's 10.
That's 30, okay, so I think we should keep it 3, okay. Look at 3 minutes.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest, Dawn, if you want to make a motion to limit it to 2 minutes, that is within our prerogative.
I want to leave it at 3.
Everyone wants
Leave it at 3, okay, if we want to leave it at 3, I'm fine with that. I have nowhere to go except home. So I am perfectly fine with the 3-minute limit. Right now, we are calling on Julie from Oakland County. Julie,
Why do you say my county? I'm just curious. I don't hear you say anybody else's county.
no, we will.
Ever. That didn't happen before. It's very intimidating.
Well, we have started doing that
I never
in
wrote it
order to identify people, because people of this area are the ones who pay the millage.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start the timer.
Well, wait, can you, I'm sorry. We're starting now?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you ready? Yeah.
Thanks. So this board is threatening readers like my family as library card holders in this library. You're threatening our fundamental freedoms with book bans that your political and religious friends are pushing, and these baseless anti-LGBTQ policies, which are not just about restricting access to certain material. They are tools of discrimination and erasure, which is the real goal here. Last meeting, Bill Bolin reluctantly admitted to working with the legal team at Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, to draft Cromaine's new policy to censor and hide books away, which we were talking about tonight that you guys deem sexually inappropriate. ADF is a designated hate group by the SPLC. They are currently working hard in courts right now to overturn conversion therapy bans in them around the country. Founders of ADF have warned that gay marriage can lead to incest, bestiality, and pedophilia. They have praised Hitler, and they described gay rights as, quote, the principal threat to religious freedom. Attacking the rights and dignity of gay people has literally been the center of ADF's work. Their goal is to trigger as many lawsuits that can get to the Supreme Court as possible. They know that what they're proposing here at Cromaine likely will be challenged legally, but that is precisely the point. They want it to go to court because ADF's ultimate goal is eliminating LGBTQ plus American status as protected class citizens. Folks need to understand that dismantling libraries is one portion of Project 2025's long-term goal of steeping every major sphere of society in Christianity. Bill Bolin's extraordinary amount of power over our local election outcomes through his 1,000-plus congregation at his mega church, which has been such a huge concern for years now that New York Best Time sellers are writing about it and warning people about what he's doing. he's been scaring people around Livingston County into believing that there is an enemy that's coming for their children, that they are in a holy war with them on the side of God and others on the side of evil. This, of course, is ridiculous, since they are the ones trying to impose their values and religious convictions onto the rest of us. But when people believe a group is morally repugnant or socially dangerous, it adds to a tremendous intensity to the commitment and the loyalty of their movement and mission. A matching commitment and loyalty to ending this attack on our library and First Amendment rights has not materialized yet. We as a community must act now to secure the future of the library and intellectual freedom. We must understand where the coordinated censorship movement is going next in order to be able to effectively push back, which is why SAGE is holding an emergency community forum in Hartland on Thursday, July 10th, from 6 to 8 p.m. to discuss this serious situation and talk about ideas on how we're going to move forward. Please find me afterwards for more information.
Daniel Bow or Boo? From Livingston County, Daniel? Must not be here any longer. Kate, Missouri?
She wanted to discuss.
From Hartland?
My name's Kate Zara.
Okay.
30 minutes? Okay. As you were talking, I found this picture of Antietam battlefield. This is graphic violence to me. But it's also history. It's both. Where I see this country going, this library going, dangerous territory. It's lukewarm water. We're just tipping our toes in it. We're a frog, and you've heard the story about the frog who is, a frog thrown in boiling water will jump out of it, but a frog that's slowly boiled stays and dies. This is a slow boil to fascism, and it's just a little step. It's a tiny step, it's a baby step. It doesn't seem like that bad. And yes, I agree, parents should have the right to know what their children are reading, but get the book before you're going to read the book. That way, you know what they're reading. There are many organizations in this country that are, like I was mentioned during the board meeting, that get books, get a list of books, and just make complaints, causing excessive works for the librarians that they're not able to do, or that take away from other more important things that they could be doing. This is a slow roll to fascism. Make no mistake about it. That's what this is. And it starts with little baby steps, and then it's over. We're losing our country, and this is one of the pillars that's going down with it. And I do appreciate the work that you're doing. I serve on the state board of midwifery. I'm not here representing that board. We use explicit language. We have to follow. I wrote rules and regulations and codes, and I sat in many meetings like this one, and it's difficult work. And I see that it's difficult work. Please do the right thing. And don't just serve a small portion of people that are just screaming. See the bigger picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick? From Brighton. Hello.
So I have lived in Livingston County since 2005. So what this policy that you're working on here is this going to be the end? Is it going to be the end? Because to me, it seems like one tiny step, and it's a tiny step that really doesn't seem that bad, but it is a tiny step into having the library ban books about people like me, into saying that people like me are sexually explicit, which I have a problem with. And one of the reasons is that you have like a really, really weird and inconsistent definition of sexually explicit. So here's a funny little anecdote about that. So I wear these cat ears, and some people have their opinions about that. I like them. I like the way they look on me. One funny thing that someone said is is that, that's for 4-year-olds. That's one thing. The very next sentence is that, oh, it should be kept in the bedroom. Do you see the problem with that? So you're taking people who hold opinions just like that and letting them define what sexually explicit is and say that we're the ones sexualizing children. So, yeah, we have the tiniest little step. But wherever that step leads us, it scares me, because I don't want to see a point where my existence is deemed sexually explicit, when my existence becomes illegal.
From Hartland.
Good evening. I attended my first library board meeting last month, and I was embarrassed for Cromaine. The majority of the discussion was about culture war issues, not the library service issues, even though your own survey showed that culture war was not the priority. The parental rights group is focused on taking away the rights of parents to decide what their own children read. Ironic, isn't it? I was also concerned when the president of the board was hesitant to give any information on the lawyer he consulted, an out-of-state lawyer with the Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF. So I did some research, as I was taught by a great librarian many years ago. I discovered that the ADF is a Christian conservative advocacy group that works to expand Christian religious practices within public schools and government. They are most known for fighting to outlaw abortion, opposing same-sex marriage and other LGBTQ and transgender rights, as well as anti-discrimination laws. Again, the irony of a group with freedom in their name taking rights away. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to the Danbury, Connecticut Baptist Convention. In that letter, he stated there must be a wall of separation between church and state. To clearly limit the involvement of religious denominations and leaders in governments, we need to honor the wishes of our founding fathers by voting down this ridiculous invasion of parental rights by religious zealots. Please do your research and learn that some board members are trying to force their religious beliefs on our kids. It has nothing to do with protecting kids. That's the excuse they hide behind. It is the parents' job to protect and decide what is best for their children, not a board of directors.
From Livingston County.
Great book by Timothy Alberta called The Kingdom, Power, and the Glory. Speaks heavily about Floodgate Church and its pastor. ADF is a shocker to just learn now that it's like an actual hate group. Not surprising, but a shocker for a supposedly secular organization that a certain person would like to, first of all, in his church, mix politics with religion. Now he'd like to drag his religion into the secular intellectual realm, and we all do not think like him, contrary to what I consider cult members. Sorry, that's how I define it. Dirty Book Hour with Jeannine Gogoleski. That sounds great. Let's all read. Why don't you just have a library board section where she can read every goddamn dirty book she wants to? I mean, you gotta be kidding me. Where planet do you come from? And my God, for your husband to take a photo of me the minute he walks in here, what a disgusting man. And for you to put your hands on someone, you and your husband, that is an assault. What a disgusting, evil thing to do to someone. For him to drag me out for exercising my free speech. Are you kidding me? you've got a lot of nerve. Anyway. Okay, potty training, suggestions that non-community based parents often don't have that potty time to seek the help they seek. Like, big deal, like, guess what, when you're a mom and you have a choice to go to a library or not, one, and most toddlers aren't reading like informational advice for parents, so for you to pick apart little stupid things like that, this is my opinion, it's like, who are you to say that? Maybe I saw some advice I needed as a struggling parent with a postpartum depression or, other issues, grief issues. We all have issues. Death exists. We're going to tell children it doesn't? Are you kidding me? What kind of, you really go from 0 to pouring in a quick second. And dirty book hour, why don't you do that on taxpayer time? That's ridiculous. Or non-taxpayer time. Just get all together and listen to see if she can string a few words together without assaulting free speech. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will please refrain from clapping and catcalling, we would appreciate that. Maintain your order. Jason Ringcliffe. And from
Let me come in Jesus' name, may the Holy Spirit fill this room, soften everyone's hearts. Bless our board with wisdom and discernment, give them eyes to see and ears to hear. We need people to have the jawbone, speak up with a backbone, stand up with the tailbone so they can hold up. Some people are jawless, spineless, and light in the pants culturally who will not fight for our kids. We need people who will fear God, not politics nor man. Public leaders and librarians have gone off the rails. The power, the money, the politics, the woke left, the rainbow mafia, and the special interest groups that are undermining our children's innocence. The library needs to stand up against perverts, pedophiles, the woke left extremists, the rainbow mafia who are promoting or supporting inappropriate books or drag queen story hour. Anyone supporting this crap needs to be criminally prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The library might want to get their legal team involved in how many obscene and explicit sexual books are currently in this library right now. Anyone here complaining about banning any books, just calm down. The U.S. Department of Justice website discusses obscenity. It states that the following federal law strictly prohibits distribution of obscene matter to minors. That is what the federal law says about obscenity. Any transfer to a minor under the age of 16, including over the internet, is punishable under federal law. The radical left and rainbow mafia keep shoving tolerance down everyone's throats. Isaiah 5 says, "Woe for those who call evil good and good evil." You think that you are loving people well, but you have turned your back on God's word to affirm their sin. The greatest commandment is to love God first. Love people second, but you're seeing this affirmation that comes from the affirmation because people have replaced repentance with tolerance. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell you to tolerate sin. Tolerance is not a virtue. It is, in fact, a revelation. Chapter 2, you have tolerated this woman Jezebel who takes my people to sexual perversion. The Bible says to not tolerate sexual sin. Anywhere you see tolerance preached, you will see sexual perversion celebrated. 31,000 scriptures do not affirm practice or homosexuality. If you want scripture that affirms homosexuality practice, close your Holy Bible, open up a satanic Bible, reference that will affirm your sexual desire. We have two lives, an earthly life and an afterlife. The body in the presence of God, getting judged, tried, sent to heaven or hell. Our nation needs to return to God, protecting their kids, their hearts, their minds, souls, and their innocence. 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. God bless y'all. God wins. Have a good night. God bless y'all.
Good
to see you, Jason. Lovely.
From Livingston County.
Sorry. Okay. I'm Janet Jackson, and I agree with the speaker who was talking about slow descent to fascism, and it's scary. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan. I taught U.S. history. I taught the Holocaust. Eighth graders are one of the most difficult units to teach, for sure. And also taught about other genocides, other places too. And I just finished actually reading Alex and Holly's book, Patriot. So you guys are all readers. It's a great book. The one thing I thought of while we were talking, we have the parental warning. Parents, it's your choice. You can decide which kid wants or not. Done. End of story. We could have been out of here. We could have been all done. Here's the books. We could have been done tonight, hours ago, if we just said that. Just repeat that. Parents can choose. You can come to the library. You can look at a book. You can Google that book. You can go to the catalog. You can ask the librarians like Ms. Snyder. You can ask her what's in this book. You can find it all online too. So you can just do that. You can just say we are done. And we don't have to have a form to challenge or move a book. Just go to the library with your kids. Or if they come home and they got a book you don't like, just, okay, pull it, get it out of there. You know, what do you do with the toy? Like, they make something into a toy that isn't, you know, what you approve of. You just take it away. It goes on top of the fridge. You know? So, it goes on top of the refrigerator. And just the vagueness of age inappropriate, graphic violence. You could look at Guernica by Picasso. I showed that painting in school when we were doing literature and art and humanities. What about all these paintings that depict war? And those are graphic violence, but should we not show people that so kids think that war is just, video games? So I think we just got to go like, we can go beyond, and that's where the slippery slope infection comes in. And then if you do decide, of course, maybe you already have, but you're going to have a policy to request removal of books. Can someone request that a book that had been removed and relocated be put back? Somebody second?
Please refrain from the hand without being
I remember that.
Illa, Michigan.
Sorry, guys.
Good evening. My name is Ella Kusiba, and I've been a resident of Hartland for 21 years. For my entire life, I've been a part of the Cromaine community, and it is thanks to the quality and variety of materials and services available at this very library that I have grown to the capable person I am today. Our nation's libraries have served as bastions of free thought, individual expression, and community concern for centuries. The proposals we discuss today come ostensibly from the concern that Hartland's youth are being exposed to explicit materials of pornography within these walls. This narrative would naturally give rise to trepidation and panic in any decent person. It is comforting to know, then, that thanks to our fantastic librarians here at Cromaine, children are not accessing pornography in our library. Our hardworking librarians and staff have worked for decades to protect and preserve the contents of our library and to ensure books which contain sexually explicit material are carefully vetted and housed within our library's adult selection. However, you may ask, if our systems in place work so well, why are we gathered here today? What about the dangerous materials? Over 200 books filled with sexually explicit content listed in tonight's board meeting packet. Statistically speaking, most of the challenge materials primed for restriction are aimed at teen audiences, 7th grade through 12th grade, and none of the challenge materials contain pornography of any kind. Instead, the public resources targeted either pertain to, allude to, or explore LGBT people or topics. These resources range from biographies on civil rights leaders and historical figures to a graphic novel about DC character Harley Quinn to several parenting aid resources intended for adults. Several of the challenged fictitious items simply include or make mention of a gay or trans individual, or, in the case of a specific challenge titled Worm Loves Worm, make no mention whatsoever of the LGBT community, but could merely be interpreted as such. According to our very own board packet for today's meeting, the majority of the 200 plus challenges our library is facing come from just 12 different individuals, specifically targeting resources containing LGBT content. When a member of our library staff was working with one of these challengers, she said, quote, I explained to her that her library policy only a parent may restrict what their own child may read, and that public bodies may not restrict access to the books based on the book's viewpoint. She indicated that her own personal views about gender should take precedence over the rights of other parents and children in the community. I'm not here to lecture any of you on what to believe when it comes to topics of sexuality and gender. In return, the rest of our community should not be forced to bear the burden of a small minority clamoring for censorship of materials which contradict their individual partisan or theological beliefs. Simple mention or discussion of an LGBT individual does not constitute pornography any more than discussion of a traditional couple does, and the redefinition of non-explicit materials as sexually explicit with the explicit intent of weaponizing child safety laws against partisan opponents is a wild difference to what our country should stand for. It is unconscionable to force members of our community to jump through hoops simply to access the public material they are owed based on the moral objections of the local minority. Thank you for your time. And for the record, the statistics I resort
Your time is, so thank you.
they're recorded from the online board packet, not the compiled.
Cheryl Bernard from Health, are you here? Okay, then under that consideration, we call the public now in.
Chair, I'd like to speak also, please.
Did you turn your?
Nothing in the policy said I had to turn it in prior to the meeting, it just said I had to turn it in to speak.
And Susan, where are you from?
I'm not from your library district.
Okay, that's, we'll let that stand, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. People in Livingston County have a constitutional right to information, and a basic way to exercise that right is through a public library. Removing or restricting materials because some members of the community object is censorship. Nobody here tonight wants to use the C word, but it's censorship. And it is a violation of the First Amendment, as some of your board members have tried to tell you. There are no obscene materials in this library. A book or other library material isn't obscene just because it contains sexual content or images. Sexual content in literature, even when written for younger readers, is not necessarily obscene. There is age-appropriate sexual content. I hope you're aware that puberty onset in young women starts at 8 years of age. Yes, minors need to have access to appropriate sexual education materials in their public library. The label of obscenity can't be applied by you folks. It's a legal term. It can only be applied using the Miller test. And nobody here tonight mentioned the Miller test, amazingly. The law protects children from truly harmful books and materials by keeping those materials out of this library. Material selection for children and minors is a matter of personal and family choice, and it's the responsibility of parents. You said yourself in your policy that library boards and directors are not able to stand in the shoes of parents when it comes to the well-being of minors. Yet here you are, trying to do that. A library board that restricts access to materials risks very costly legal action, as you know, and it loses community support for its villages. This constant threat of censorship creates division in your community, and it is just as damaging as actual censorship. I have to say it's very uncomfortable watching this board. The authoritarian manner in which you operate is very chilling to your community. It's also uncomfortable to watch your chair smile at each of the speakers coming to this podium who are sharing concerns that are very near and dear to their heart and are not laughing matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably should fix that.
All right, with that, we are closing the call to the public and now agenda items for this meeting. Oh, we don't need to address that. I'm thinking we're at the board meeting, so this is where we are. So with that, I'm calling this meeting over.
That's for her. I'm pretty incognito, but I'm. I wasn't sure. I was like, geez. No, okay.
Thank you very much.
Or you can keep it. Oh. Thank you. Thank you.